Dear viewers, we have been joined by our first guest for this evening in the studio, who acquires a very exceptional talent in playing a recently introduced music instrument, the handpan. Of course, we're going to know more about that with our guest, the musician Tariq Qabbani. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. To start off, can you tell us about yourself and how you started with your musical journey, we can say?
Started here in Kuwait. I think it first started flourishing. I was around 15 years old, just about, finishing up high school. Music kind of ran in my family before that, so I think maybe previous to me kind of discovering it, it was kind of there. I have an uncle that plays many instruments, and another uncle, Allah yarhamah, he used to play with him in a band. And so it kind of was in me, and I guess started off at around 15.
So music was really part of your childhood?
I think so, yeah, and now it's even, it's flowing through my brother and sister as well, and my cousins as well, you know what I mean? So it's,
amazing.
It's kind of spread out, yeah.
So before we get to the details of the handpan, which I'm very excited to talk about, was it the first instrument you gravitated towards, or did you start with something else in the beginning?
I started with the drums, actually. That was my first instrument. And then I picked up the guitar, because my sister bought a guitar the same day, and so it was a drum kit and a guitar. So I would fiddle around with both. And then a little bit of piano and bass guitar, and then I started recording things in a laptop and producing, and then making songs, and percussion as well followed, and this thing as well kind of soon followed after. But yeah, basically I started hitting things, and many years later, I guess here we are.
And then you got to the handpan.
Yes, this is the latest and the greatest, actually.
Definitely, and it's a pretty new instrument. I mentioned that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was out by 2001.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's
around
not
millennium,
so
early 2000s.
widespread.
Not really. It's like just been 20 years. We just celebrated its 20th year, and I think in October it was Handpan Day that was just like first declared.
Which is amazing. So can you tell us about the history of the handpan, and how did you get to know it personally? Okay.
The history of it, was kind of, so there was this famous percussionist that approached this Swiss couple one time, and he wanted to combine a ceramic, I think it was an Indian instrument, with a Caribbean steel instrument. The Indian instrument was called, I think it was Indian, I'm not sure, I might be mistaken. It's a gatam or a ghatam. And the Caribbean instrument was the steel pan. So he's like, hey Felix, hey Sabina, these are the guys that started this whole phenomenon in 2000 in Bern, Switzerland. Felix and Sabina, I think I mentioned. So this musician came up to them and he's like, hey guys, I think Felix used to make steel pans before, and he was a steel pan player. And so this musician came to them and said, hey man, can we make a steel pan playable by hand? And so Felix and Sabina looked up and researched, okay, how can we like flip it around? If you've seen a steel pan, it's kind of like the notes upside down, you know what I mean? But there is no kind of closing shell. So what they did was basically they added another piece of metal and they closed it.
Beautiful.
And there's also a sound hole at the bottom which helps the sound resonate, and that was the birth of the handpan.
And how did you find out about it? Was there a specific moment that you remember?
Yeah, actually in Centrepoint Mall in Toronto in about 2006 or maybe 7. I was just finishing high school. I don't even think it was that late. I think it was even before then. I think it was, no, I wasn't finishing high school, 2005, 6. Anyways, it was back then, and it was in a mall. It was a family friend's friend, and she's like, hey Turk, you like the drums, right? You'd love the hang drum, check it out. I was like, a hang drum? Like hangman? Like, what are you talking about? Like, hang your clothes? She's like, yeah, check out the hang drum. So back then there wasn't, YouTube or Facebook. I think maybe YouTube was out, but you couldn't really
find so much details on it.
Yeah, exactly. Not, as easy as you can now. And so I went home and I Googled it and I researched it, and I'm like, oh my God. So as a drummer, I was like, what is this weird, unique sounding thing? Its overtones and its tones and sounds are just so enthralling and exciting. And I guess started then on the dream to acquire one. And it wasn't until about 10 or 11 years after that I first heard about it that I actually had one. I first got one in 2017.
Wow.
So 10 years, 11 was 2006. So I guess I was okay with
Perfect.
that. Yeah.
So we can say it's not so easy to find. Where can someone go and purchase a handpan?
Well, actually, I mean, back in that day, it was a lot harder to find. It was a lot, so very much controlled by, not controlled, but like Pan Art, the guys in Switzerland were like, for a couple of years, the only people making it. They inspired a lot more people to make it over the years. And from the hung came the handpan, or nowadays called the pantam, which is combining the two names of the original instruments. Anyway, nowadays it's actually a lot easier to find. As we were discussing earlier, there's even like much more mass production with the handpan now.
Yes,
but
it's not as limited anymore as it
exactly.
was.
It's easier to find now, but like to find the specific, like the special sounding ones, are the ones usually entirely made by hand, not so much by machine and mass. So basically, you contact these boutique makers. That's what they call them, handpan makers or handpan builders. And they're based all over the world. And you basically say, hey, man, do you have any handpans? He's like, yeah, okay. How much? This much. Okay. And you give him his address, you pay him the money, and you get a Christmas present in a box a couple of weeks later.
You'll be able to get your handpan.
Nowadays, that's how easy it's become. Back in the day when it first started with Pan Art in Switzerland, they actually required you to handwrite them a letter and send it in the post. Yeah, send it in the mail. Why you love the handpan, why you want to play it, why they should consider you, and then they would put you on a wait list and then maybe contact you. You know, either by mail or phone. I don't know if there was email back then.
So was it definitely like a harder process to be able to get your hands on one?
So now it's become a lot easier for people to get in touch with this instrument. And, you know, that's what we're here to do is, you know, kind of spread this.
To put the words out, because it's not something we see every day. We're used to the guitar, we're used to pianos, we're used to all the other conventional instruments. So it's amazing.
Which are still amazing in their own regards.
But this is pretty special, we'd
For sure. I think this is kind of the coolest one.
It's very
in my
cool.
opinion, because
you're definitely going to play it right before we wrap up the interview to give the audience an idea of it. But when it comes to the local or regional international handpan community, can you talk to us about that?
Sure. So let's start locally. So I bought 2 handpans from 2 friends here. Once in March 2017 and another time in December 2017. So those guys were players and traveled and played and discovered this instrument, and we were able to talk and discuss these things. And actually one of them was Melbourne, who you had on this program a couple of months ago.
Definitely. He's the first person I've seen with this instrument.
Yeah, there you go, there you go. So here I am just kind of like supporting that and like, you know, let's keep going, let's keep spreading it. So the local scene is kind of limited to like maybe 4 or 5 up to 10 players of the actual instrument or its cousin, like the Rav Vast or other tongue drums. The regional community, Dubai's scene is crazy. I think there is a player also in Bahrain. I'm not sure about the other GCC communities. I think Lebanon has a couple of players. But let's go back to Dubai. So there, I think the handpan scene is primarily there. There's like 3 or 4 big players. Big shout out to my brother Dialien, he's out there, and also Enes. They're just representing the Dubai scene, as well as other guys as well. So that's the regional. If we were to say Arab World GCC, Iran has a crazy handpan scene actually, and because I think they have import-export problems sometimes, they started making them there, and they have a couple of makers there. They've made bags for it, like the proper cases and everything. So there's a pretty vibrant scene, and I've only come to like discover this more recently.
Recently, of course,
because I've been, you know, putting the feelers out there and trying to do research. So that's a bit of the regional. In terms of the international, that's where this thing was born in Europe.
Switzerland, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly, Switzerland. Yes. So right around Switzerland is the most intense concentration of handpan festivals, makers, players, builders. You know,
so there's a really big community there.
There is. We're growing strong. You know,
definitely.
I think so. I mean, it's been around for quite a while. I mean, as you said, it's still kind of fresh, but as it's, I think, an attractive instrument or energy or vibe, it's. I think it's spreading more and more. And That's what we're trying to do. So yeah, it's handpans. Check it out. Check it out.
Exactly. I think our viewers would be really excited to hear something. But right before we get to it, can you explain to us what kind of thing you're going to do with the instrument? And you also do some vocals with it.
Yeah, okay. So handpan wasn't the first thing that I had started playing. Before then, when I wasn't able to play drums, I would beatbox, and I would make music with my mouth, or even like tapping desks and tables and annoying people around me. I would like click with my tongue and stuff. And so I started beatboxing. And along the line, I also learned about tuvan throat singing, which is a Mongolian tribal kind of chant that you do with projecting your throat vibration, if you will. And so I kind of combined those two things. Beatbox, I think, started in the States in the 80s. The Mongolian tuvan throat singing, which started God knows when, and then this thing, which started in the millennium, and like fusing all of them together, I kind of, you know, make a interesting little presentation, which I can't wait to share.
Like a nice mashup of them. Let's hear something then.
Yeah? If I may just...
Definitely.
Because we're going to get used to him in a second. All right.
So much. That was amazing.
Pretty much.
Thank you.
Kind of got lost a bit there.
Of course. That was very passionate, we can tell.
Thanks.
And thank you for introducing the handpan to us in the best possible way.
It's my pleasure.
Pleasure having you with us
Thank
today.
you so much. My pleasure. Have a good night. Take care.
We had with us the musician Tariq Qabbani, and now we will cut to our next report, award ceremony for the Green Cultural Festival. Stay tuned.